This is the Industry 45 podcast show with your host, Shane Christopher Neal. Podcast available at Giant TV Niagara on YouTube.
All right, welcome to the Industry 45 podcast show. Shane Christopher Neal, your host. GiantFM.com, GiantTV.ca, Giant TV Niagara on YouTube, and now available at MusicLifeMagazine.net, thanks to my friend Joel Knappen. Today, all the way from Scottsdale, Arizona, he's been a member of Megadeth since the very beginning, Mr. David Ellefson. And Dave, the first thing I want to ask you is that, you know, we were in the midst of this lockdown in COVID-19. Kind of, what have you been up to? What have you been doing to kind of get yourself through all this?
Well, you know, this thing when it started, I think kind of the first thing, like I go to the gym pretty much every day. You know, I was working out with a trainer, and so it's pretty soon that, you know, obviously the gyms and those things started closing right away. And it's so funny. I'd just gone to Costco and bought 4 bicycles for my family, literally right before this happened. And those bicycles have been the best investment I've made in the last few months, because we're out every day riding. You know, where we live, it's in suburbia, but we're up by the mountains and stuff, and it's very easy to social distance here. So we're able to at least get outside, exercise every day. You know, it's Arizona, so everybody has a swimming pool, so we do have a pool in the backyard. And as it's been getting warmer, it's been nice to go out and swim and, you know, change up the exercise routine, and that's been good. And, but I've been working on, you know, a lot in the, you know, writing stuff, solo stuff for my next Ellefson, solo record, which looks like we're going to try to get that out in October. And, you know, Megadeth stuff, we're going to probably try to record that here, sometime this summer. So, you know, I'd assume that record will be out probably 2021. You know, and of course we've got a big big U.S. tour coming up here, but you know, we're always ready to play, but it's going to be in the hands of our promoter Live Nation and the local city ordinances and all the other stuff. So a lot of that is really out of our hands at this point. You know,
I'm going to ask you this just because you brought up touring, but you know, recently, I think today it was, I saw on Live Nation, you know, talking about playing shows basically in front of nobody, or, you know, very few people, or, you know, drive-in. Like, what are your thoughts about this? I mean, to me, that's crazy. I know they need to do something, but I just don't know if I could actually see that happening.
Well, I love the drive-in concept. You know, I haven't been to a drive-in since, you know, I grew up in Minnesota. And I remember, you know, I went a couple times with my parents when me and my brother were super young, and it was boring and it sounded terrible, and it's all that we know it to be. But then I did go see when I was probably just a young teenager, I saw Alien, the very first Alien in the movie theater at a drive-in. It just scared the living daylights out of me. So that was pretty metal, you know. So I don't know. It could happen in movie theaters. I mean, you know, in drive-in theaters, I should say. But, you know, I think obviously the problem is metal and stuff. I mean, what are they going to do? Start flashing their lights and honking and sort of, you know?
They might.
You know? Yeah, they might. You know, there was a great meme on Instagram that showed, like, the cars all piled up like it was a mosh pit, like cars, like, smash up derby, you know? But, yeah, I mean, it's our human desire to have fellowship with other people and to be around each other and see each other face to face. And, you know, look, phone calls and Zoom meetings and all these things are great, but, you know, it's not the same as having real human interaction. So, you know, concerts are obviously, you know, the concert business is one thing, which is put as many people in as big of a room as you can. And That obviously runs in complete direct opposition to what we have to do right now with this thing. So, you know, I don't know, my opinion is, whatever, however, you know, I think it's all good. And obviously, look, Live Nation is a big promoter. When they can do your shows, it's big stuff, you know, and so they're probably looking to preserve their business. We want Live Nation to stay in business. We don't want them to go out of business. So, you know, whatever we all can do, and I think fans will be happy, you know, however they can sort of get out, as long as it's safe and people feel comfortable doing it.
So not only are you writing music and such, but you've got something really cool going on with your Youth Music Foundation Schools Out initiative. And so this has been going on, since 2018? So tell me a little bit about that, the background behind that.
Yeah, we started the foundation in 2018, and when it's funny, my partner Tom Hazer and I were just talking back in January about putting some more attention into the foundation in 2020. It was actually one of our directives, with the various things we have with our coffee company and our record label and all these different things he and I do together. And, then by mid-March, it was interesting because as everything was starting to shut down, obviously schools were closing. Tom called me one day and said, "Hey man, why don't you start giving bass lessons, maybe on Skype or something? I don't know. We'll just do them online. We'll do them for free." Cause all these kids are just, this thing is really starting to shut down. And so I reached out to a bunch of my friends, current and former Megadeth members, Nita Strauss from Alice Cooper's band, Bumblefoot, a bunch of people. And I just asked them, I said, "Hey, would you guys be willing to pitch in and give a lesson or two as part of our foundation, just to, keep people excited about music and keep people focused on something positive and creative in this very strange, unprecedented time?" And of course, they all agreed. They were into doing it. And, then we did a couple of fundraisers, these webathons, as we call them. Oh, Say Can You Stream is what we called them. And we did those as fundraisers. Fortunately, our foundation doesn't have a big overhead. We don't have expensive staff and buildings and all this stuff. So the money we raise can go directly into the purpose of the foundation, which was to, quite honestly, employ some musicians to be able to give lessons. So, because a lot of musicians, my musician buddies, they're out of work too. I mean, tours are canceled.
Sure.
Our business changed. Our business got hit first, like immediately, along with, of course, gyms and restaurants and bars and everything else. I mean, the live entertainment business, man, I got a lot of friends out of work, and myself included to some degree, but, I'm in a season where I didn't have any tours, so I'm not missing work that I was expecting to do. So it actually gives me some time to be working on some other creative stuff. So kind of between us, it just was a great sort of, call to arms for a lot of my friends in the business. And we started giving free music lessons to students all around the world now through the Schools Out initiative.
So you have a number of people that are part of this. Do you have, if I was 18 or younger and I wanted to sign up, do you have a choice of who you're going to work with, or does it just depend on who's available at that time? Like, kind of explain that a little bit, because there's countless names here, right, of people that are helping out. So
yeah, you can request. If you go to Ellefson Youth Music Foundation.org, that is where the sign-up list is. And yeah, it's for students 18 years and younger. And that's where you go sign up. And you can request what instructor you would like to have. And, there's a lot of them. I mean, we've got like 1,000 entries, so we're headlong at it, picking them down. But it's nice because, initially we thought it was just kind of going to be something here in the USA. And then we realized, this is all over the world. And so we've been doing lessons all across, Europe, South America, North America. So it's something that's really been beneficial for students everywhere.
So if you were 18 back in those days, and this was happening back then, who would you pick as someone that you'd, I guess, like to take lessons from? Any thought to that?
Well, gosh, Geddy Lee, Gene Simmons, Ian Hill from Judas Priest, KK Downing from Judas Priest, Angus Young, what I mean? Sure. I also play guitar too. So for me, Tom Scholes from Boston, there's all kinds of, Eddie Van Halen, Michael Anthony. And some of these guys, it's lessons, of course. And there's a few people like Chris Cale from Five Finger Death Punch. He said, look, I'm not so much a bass teacher, but I'm happy to get on the phone and just even kind of do some encouragement,
Sure.
just rally some morale and support like that. So it's these don't necessarily have to be like little Johnny shows up and for a 30-minute music lesson. It of course could be that and probably should be that. But some we ask, it's like, hey, what do you want to learn? And sometimes they want to learn a song. Sometimes they want to learn, hey, how do I just, play the instrument a little better, So
Sure.
It's been really a lot of fun doing them.
I want to switch over to Megadeth for just a little bit here. So after almost 40 years, I'm kind of curious, it's been almost 40 years, right, with Megadeth. Your relationship with Dave Mustaine, what's that been like over 40 years? It's kind of obviously had its ups and downs, but maybe speak to that, because I think it's a very special relationship. You started this right from the very beginning.
Yeah, we did. And, it's funny, for two guys named Dave who both like the same kind of music, and had the same end in mind, we're definitely wired different. And you have to be in a band. We had a saying early on that if the two of us are going to always agree on everything, then one of us is unnecessary. So to have, to be able to collaborate, to bounce ideas off each other, to agree to disagree, I think that's an important part of any long-standing relationship, be it a business relationship, a marriage, family members, whatever. You're not going to always agree on things. And especially as you grow up, you grow, you first meet and you're a certain age, you've got certain ambitions. And then, I always said, if having no money if that's not hard enough, when you start to have a little success, start to make a little bit of money, that changes the relationship again, because now it's like, hey, we don't have to share the same apartment. Wow, we can get our own cars. We can live separate. Hey, we can, get married, have families, so all these things, they sort of, create new dynamics in your band relationship, and, so, he and I have been through all this stuff, and,
Sure.
Drugs, alcohol, addicted, not addicted, sober, not sober. I mean, we've been through all the gamut of everything. And, managers, and a lot of it too is, who do you trust, especially as a group that gets bigger. And, sometimes it isn't just the four of you in the band. It's your external people that are guiding you, agents, managers, record companies, lawyers. There's a lot of different people that, sometimes those relationships change, so, being in a rock band is a business like no other, believe me.
I said this to you earlier that I myself, heavy metal, I can take it or leave it. I've seen Megadeth twice, and it was awesome the times that I went. And something I just don't listen to every day, but I can appreciate, if that makes sense. Dave once said that Megadeth would become one of the most dangerous bands. I remember that. Have you accomplished that, do you think?
Sure. No, for sure. I mean, early on, it's funny when you go to rehab a couple of times, like we all have, they talk to you about, this sort of thrill-seeking, dangerous behavior, risky behavior, again, drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, all the gamut of probably, the good, the bad, and the otherwise. And, that's kind of that moment when you kind of look at that and you just kind of go, man, it's like the life we've been living. And of course we got sober and then immediately started skydiving. If the drugs and booze weren't going to kill us, we're going to, screw it. Let's go jump out of airplanes.
Oh man. Question on songwriting. I know you have solo projects, and I know you write a lot of music, probably daily, in fact. And when you're writing songs, how do you decipher, I guess, where that song fits? Like, is it a Megadeth song? Is it a solo song? Is it a song I'm going to give to somebody else? Is there a formula for that, or do you just kind of see what works in that space when you're doing it?
No, that's a good question. I mean, years ago, I think probably, when I was in my, late 20s, early 30s, I was only in Megadeth, and again, when you put a band together like we did, and you have to see it through to the success and the heights that we were able to, take the band to, you can't, there's no time to do anything else. It's a singular focused mission. There came a period, so I guess to answer your question, everything I wrote then was pretty much always focused there. However, I did start to compile a lot of stuff. And in fact, my first solo record that I put out last year, the Ellefson Sleeping Giants record, it has 3 new songs on it, but all the rest of the material are demos of things that I wrote as far back as 1993. And they were things that I had written during the Megadeth Countdown to Extinction cycle. I got in this I went out and I just started buying a bunch of guitars. I finally had a little money in my pocket, and I wasn't buying like expensive, $100,000 rare Flying V's or anything like that. I just walk into a store and pick up a $400 guitar and go, this song feels like it's got a song in it, and that's how I pick guitars now, is I pick them up, and either a song comes out of it or it doesn't, and that to me is why I buy a guitar. And you know, and during that process, I wrote a ton of stuff, and I think that opened my mind to, you know, then getting off the road, collaborating with some other people back in Los Angeles where I lived at the time, shopping some music around to some music production, music like to record labels, and you know, Tom Wally was the president of Interscope Records at the time, which was a brand new label, and Tom was actually our A&R guy at Capitol when we first got signed in 1986 to Capitol Records. So I started to meet people, you know, the people that I knew in the business. I started going around, you know, taking songs to them, and I was just about ready to start doing some more co-writing, and then my wife and I relocated out here to Scottsdale, so it kind of pulled me out of that loop a little bit. But it was interesting because then that kind of opened up a different phase of life. We, of course, recorded the Euthanasia record out here in Phoenix, and you know, some other, you know, I started a family, so, you know, some other things developed in my life. But, you know, that's why I think probably this season of my life now in the last bunch of years has been, you know, you see me putting out a lot of records with a lot of different people and collaborating and writing and doing a lot of different stuff, because they're, you know, I'm not just a one-trick pony, as no artist really is.
Sure.
But we do know inside of Megadeth that material needs to be very selectively chosen, and it needs to be very specific, because it does say Megadeth on the album cover.
You know, and technology today, especially amidst what's happening now with COVID-19, I mean, is really on your side, right? Because you can do everything from the comfort of your home. Keyboards, you can play guitar, bass, drums, everything, and send files around the world. And it's probably very convenient. If it might be different 20 years ago, right? But today it's got to be so easy to be sharing your music with people.
It is. And I mean, you know, like just for instance, today, like many other days, you know, I have an idea. I will send it over to my guitar player friend, Andy Martingelli, who's now the guitar player in my Ellefson solo band. And he's actually a friend of Kiko, our guitar player in Megadeth. Kiko introduced me to Andy. But I'll take an idea and I'll just sit here on my iPhone and I'll just sort of play and I'll shoot a little video of it. And I'll send it over to him on WhatsApp, and he'll lay it into he'll start a new session file at his house. He's over in Verona, Italy, and he's been locked down, of course, as a lot of Italy has. So he's had a lot of time for us to be working on songs together. And so I'll be sending him stuff, and he'll basically kind of I'll take the idea, he'll line it out, turn it into an actual, you know, song inside of a you know, digital audio workstation session file. And from there, then we start bouncing that file around to back over here to me, up to Green Bay for my singer, Tom. Our drummer, Paulo, lives down by Bologna in Italy, so he can play drums on it. We send it up to they send it back to Bumblefoot over in New Jersey, and he can add vocals and guitar parts and things. And then we send it up to our mixer, Alessio, up in London, and he mixes it, and we send it to our mastering guy in LA, and suddenly it ends up on all of our stereos. You know, so
that's crazy.
That's just a little look inside of the Ellefson, you know, hit factory here.
And Bumblefoot's a lot of fun. I interviewed him a couple times in Toronto when he played, and super guy. I just couldn't believe how laid back and funny and fun and a real character and a great player. Holy shit.
Yeah, no, I always joke, Bumblefoot knows the first four chords of every song ever written, you know. He's just such a musicologist, and yeah, you know, every one of us has a different skill, and Bumble is just, you're right, he's just a sweet guy. We call him Humblefoot because he's just this nice, sweet, mild-mannered guy, yet he gets on stage and, you know, he's just got such a nice, charming, attractive personality. He sings great. He plays great. And yeah, he's anytime you can work with Bumblefoot is a good day.
I want to talk just in general about heavy metal music for a second. And it's interesting because I spent a lot of time working in radio, and the wave goes up and down. And we saw, of course, in the late 80s, all the hair rock, and then that went away. We had grunge rock. Heavy metal it's like a fucking freight train. Like, it just started and just went and never stopped. And I look at like bands like yourself or Metallica or so many others that just keep putting albums out and keep playing and keep selling out tours. What is it about heavy metal fans and just how passionate they are about that music?
You know, I liken it to like a Harley Davidson bike club. You know, it's like, it's just always going to be there. Yeah, there's Yamahas, there's Hondas, there's Kawasaki's, but a Harley's a special breed, you know, and that to me is what heavy metal is. It's a special breed. And, The club, it's pretty exclusive. Everybody's welcome, but there is sort of a dress code. There's just kind of a lifestyle quotient to it. You know what I mean? It's an extreme form of music. Let's face it, it's rock and roll, but it's a subgenre of rock and roll, and it's like everybody goes out to get something to eat. But not everybody goes to the Brazilian churrascaria. You know what I mean? Right. Not everybody, is into, Mexican food. You know what I mean? So that's how I look at music. It's all food, but there's little subgenres, and let's face it, not every day you want to eat steak or Mexican food or burgers either. It's nice to change it up a little bit. So I think probably contrary to some of the belief is a lot of us metal musicians, as much as we play it, and obviously we're into it, you have to be, in order to really deliver it with conviction. But, we're pretty well-rounded. We like to listen, and even some of us play some other stuff too. And that's what makes our metal music even better when we hit the stage. I remember when Symphony of Destruction came out, our band played that. That was the only Megadeth song I've ever played. See? So There you go. Yeah, and that's the one. I mean, it's funny. I still love playing that song. It gets such a great response from the audience. And, people often ask me, what's your favorite song to play? And my response is always the one you like to hear us play. Yeah, because nothing's more lonely than standing on a stage and you're kind of going, God, how come we're not connecting? What's going on here? And fortunately with Megadeth, our catalog is pretty broad, but it connects with our fans. And I've been in bands that have been successful. I've been in bands that haven't been successful. So the most fun ones and the most successful ones are always the ones that those songs they connect with the listener.
I'll ask you this general question: 38 million albums plus sold. Do you have a favorite album of yours, or are they kind of all equally as important, and do you like them equally as much?
They're all equally as important. I mean, certainly some of them kind of slip to the side a little bit, depending on how many songs we're playing in the live show. It seems like, of course, Rest in Peace, people just want to hear that. There's stuff from Pete Sells, of course. Even Countdown to Extinction, there's a handful of those songs. So a lot of that stuff on those albums certainly, I think, probably sees the stage a little more. But, of course, Dystopia, the more recent album, at one point we were 5, 6, 7 songs deep into that during the tour. But usually on every record, there's always one or two songs that sort of have the lifespan. They seem to stay on the stage night after night, tour after tour, and that just sort of expands the greatest hit set list.
I mentioned earlier on that I had some people send me a few questions that were big fans of the band. So you can answer some of these, and you don't have to answer them. It's up to you. Okay. This is all one question. It says, why has Dave fired so many great guitarists? What is Super Collider? Who is the She-Wolf? That's what I got.
Well, look, some of the musicians have moved on from Megadeth. They just chose to go do something else. Marty Friedman was in the band 10 years, and as we see, he's become a solo artist. Al Pitrelli went back to playing in the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. So some musicians have gone on to do other things, and some of them, a couple of them had to be let go. Chris Poland in the early days, we're good friends now, and he's been sober and clean many years. At the time, he was not, and we had to let him go.
Sure.
And he's got a great memoir coming out, by the way. My partner, Tom, is actually writing with him, and it's fantastic. I mean, boy, it is a whole, you read my books, you read Dave's book, and you get obviously kind of the bookends of the Megadeth story, and then somewhere in the middle of that is Chris Poland's book, and it's fantastic. So when that comes out, definitely pick up a copy of that.
Okay, for sure.
But and then as far as the Super Collider, that is it's actually on the cover of the record, and you can look it up. If you Googled it, you would fully explain it better than I could here in a few sentences on a radio interview. So I'd say look it up online.
Okay.
And the She-Wolf, funny, the She-Wolf was the wife of an ex-manager, you know what a she-wolf is. I think it's sort of a fictitious character, but fictitious character become reality. Not not the kind of woman you want to invite into your life.
Right.
That way.
What else do I got here? Why are your albums so much better than Metallica's?
Jeez. Well, that's all a matter of opinion. I'm a Metallica fan too, so I can't comment. I mean, thank you for the kind words, but that's preference. Chocolate or vanilla.
Right.
They're both still pudding, and I'd say they both taste pretty good.
Here's another one. How accurate is the book on Dave Mustaine?
His memoir.
Yeah, his memoir.
I'd say it's really accurate. He was just finishing writing it, and then I came back into the band. So I think, ironically, the ending of his book, I think, had a radically different trajectory, because when I came back, then of course we did a tour with Slayer. We went out with the Big Four with Metallica, and of course Dave had a history with Metallica. So in a weird way, me coming back to the band, I think changed maybe the ending. I was like Wayne's World. Let's try the Scooby-Doo ending on this one, where they have like the 3 endings. And, it was just kind of serendipitous. And I don't know what the ending was going to be, but I can only imagine, reading the book and it was great. I mean, it was a good time for me and Dave to reconnect, and obviously for us to be working together again after, a couple records apart. And then we went on to do some amazing stuff. We did a couple big world tours with Slayer, and obviously those Big Four shows we did with Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax, those big stadium shows. I mean, that was a shot heard around the world for our genre. This fun, rowdy little kind of skate punk, thrash metal community that we started back in the 80s suddenly is playing stadiums by 2010.
Sure.
And
wow.
So, yeah. Again, like I say, Dave's book is one part of the story. I've written 2 books, My Life with Death and More Life with Death. I'd say the book end on the other end of the story. So I think they're all a good read, and they all sort of cross reference each other too in a really cool way.
I don't know if you can answer this one, but another question was how you felt when Dave basically handed you the business reins of Megadeth while he sorted himself out.
It was an interesting time because obviously Dave needed to step back and, kind of reposition some things in his own life. And, the truth of it is there really wasn't much business to handle at that point with Megadeth sidelined. When we're working, it's a big machinery and there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of stuff. But obviously without Dave being there at the center of it to quarterback the plays, I mean, I guess it'd be like a football team in the off season. Yeah, there's some administrative back office work that needs to be done, but without a team on the field and a team with no quarterback, there's no game,
Sure.
So it was, and by and large, it was kind of a couple of years, pretty off the radar at that point.
I'm going to ask this question. You've played with a number of drummers, including Chris Adler. You got a favorite that you've played with over the years? I mean, they're all fantastic, clearly. But somebody you connected with a little bit more than someone else? I don't know.
Sure. I mean, look, our current drummer, Dirk, is amazing. And I mean, one of the things he's great at is he can play any of the parts from any of the drummers. And that's one of the things I think with Dirk and with Kiko is, they're coming in to not only create new Megadeth music, but they also have to very accurately replicate the past members' work as well. And certainly Kiko, of course, he's got Marty Friedman and Chris Poland. And I mean, some, not just great guitar players, but very stylistically unique guitar players. And the same with Dirk, the feel that Gar Samuelson, our very first drummer, had on Killing Is My Business and Peace Sells record. I mean, Dirk can really nail that stuff. It's like he really understands and physically can sort of replicate that stuff. And, Sean Drover was a great drummer. He was kind of the unsung hero of Megadeth. He was a very low-key guy, but politically he understood exactly his role inside of Megadeth. He knew where to be and how to stand and suit up, show up, shut up, be there and play the part. I mean, that's a big part of being in a band. Just like it's a big part of being, in any company, and so he understood that. And another guy too was Chuck Beeler. Chuck Beeler was on the So Far So Good So What record, had a really awesome, really just a really laid back in the pocket groove and swing to how he played. He was very easy to play with.
Well, I can just tell you this. If you want to play some classic rock, I'm your guy. But if you want some double bass and fast fills, I'm out. I'm just out. Listen, I appreciate your time, David. Awesome stories. And you know what? I'll post the links as well for the Schools Out initiative. I think that's awesome.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thanks for your support, Shane. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Industry 45 Podcast Show. Check out all podcasts at gianttv.ca, giantfm.com, country89.com, and Giant TV Niagara on YouTube.